Well, let's spend a few minutes talking about video modeling. And before we get started with video modeling, of course, video, my goodness. With COVID, video has taken on a whole new meaning, right? Everything from flipped classrooms to modeling what we're asking the students to do because they're remote or at a distance or a hybrid, or they're face to face, but we have masks and we want to give directions and we want to engage the parents, and the list goes on. Now, when we think of video and we think of video in terms of learning, there's so much that comes into play. Now, some of you may be unfamiliar with the connection between that multimedia presentation of words and pictures and how it deals with sensory and then working memory, getting into our long-term memory. But there's actually a fair amount of research on this, going back to the 20th century for 20 to 30 years, looking at the power of video and power of multimedia in overall learning. But for today, we're going to think about video modeling. And for those of us that think of video modeling as video with our models, well, it's a little different. And for those of us that aren't getting that joke, I'm sorry. And for those of us that are like, wait, who's that model? That's Cindy Crawford. And she was the supermodel of my time, which was back in the 80s and 90s. And I think she actually has children now that are models today, but I don't know about those two, or three or four, however many there are. Okay, but with that in mind, I want to bring up my own child, and that is Nolan, when he was much younger, lived off of video models. They were very, very powerful. Why? Well, let's take the first one of several examples. So Nolan, when he was younger, decided to play King of the Slide. So there's a slide there, and it's a little different from the slide in his actual playground at school. But the slide itself had a top, of course, to it, and he decided for a period of time that King of the Slide was the game. And so, of course, students that wanted to come up the slide, nope. Students that wanted to go down the slide, nope. And he thought this was a very enjoyable game, and yet very inappropriate. Definitely defeating the purpose of inclusion, because, of course, all the kids were like, there's someone, Miss B, there's Nolan's at the top, and he's not allowing us to do this or not allowing us to do that. And, of course, Nolan thought it was a great game, and he just thought it was, excellent. Well, this was causing all sorts of challenges. And so what we need to do was we need to provide a social skill intervention. And a powerful social skill intervention is video modeling. Now, video modeling has 4 different examples. And for Nolan, we did a basic video modeling. And that is, we involved basically recording Nolan or someone else like Nolan engaged in the target behavior. So he wanted to play a little bit of a King of the Slide. Well, there's rules that he could follow. There's ways that he could do it. And he became actually the slide monitor. And we tried to show him how it would be appropriate to let students up and down and how he could kind of navigate things there. But that's a basic video model. A video self-modeling is recorded with that person or a model displaying the target behavior. All right, that can be reviewed later, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's that point of view where the target behavior is recorded from that perspective of the learner. And finally, video where we prompt. And that involves breaking the behavior skill up and incorporating pauses so we can then review, attempt to understand, etc. Now, by the way, when I share all these elements, the role of the actor does not need to be, or the actor themselves does not need to be the student that we are focusing on. And the other thing is the behavior could be lots of different things. It could be reading, it could be writing, it could be social emotional, it could be behavior, and the list goes on. Now, we're going to focus in on social skill. Now, I want you guys to know this is an evidence-based practice. And out of the National Center on Autism and Best Practices, there's a number of things that they've identified. And one, amongst others, has been social skill narratives, social skill training, and not listed here because I wanted to involve the social narratives and social skill in this screenshot is video modeling. And so all these elements are evidence-based practice, meaning that they're effective for students with disabilities, particularly students with autism, particularly in the area of social skill development. So from this perspective, the teacher, as always, we're focused on instruction and we're focused on guided instruction. And that is, I do it, we do it. And then for the student, there's an aspect of doing it together and an aspect of then doing it alone. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide that focus instruction, which is the top of that first column, down to the bottom of the second column, where independent learning on the part of the student, and video modeling can provide it. Now, with that in mind, there's lots of different examples of video modeling. In a previous presentation, when I talked about social narratives, social skills, and social narratives was an element of it, I included a number of different video models. And so I'm just offering a few more, and these are linked off of the presentation right here, but they're also linked off of the resources I'm providing for today. And I'm not going to take the time for this video for you to take a look at them, but there's a lot of variations of video modeling, and I wanted you to be aware of them. Now, of course, they can be created in lots of different ways. They can be created with, of course, iMovie or Movie Maker, but they can be created with apps like Toontastic, Camtasia, or Screenmatic, or they can even be created with books that then are recorded with narration. Well, Sean, that's not a video. Well, actually, if it's recorded and plays, it's a video, regardless of what it shows. It doesn't necessarily have to show live feed per se. It could just show a series of images and things of that nature. Now, with that, there are a series of steps. And what I want to do is I want to review those 10 basic steps for effective video modeling. They're very basic, they're very simple, and yet they're very critical. So the first one really is identifying the behavior. And here, there's two primary components. One is, what's the target behavior? Could be the fact of communication, could be writing, it could be interacting with peers, it could be requesting, expressive language. And number two, we just define and describe not only that, but what's also observable and measurable. So first of all, we define as educators what the targeted, in this instance, social skill behavior is. Let's say expressive language. We want them to start a conversation in an appropriate manner and also respond to conversations in an appropriate manner. But we also need to determine and identify it in a manner that we can observe it, meaning that, oh, there's happening, or no, it's not happening, and therefore be able to measure it. Why is that so important? Well, how can you teach something you can't observe? How can you actually determine whether or not you're having success if you can't measure? So number two, you need the correct equipment. Just a given. And you're like, of course, Sean, I've got all that type of stuff. But equally important, it's not only the correct equipment, but the correct equipment that can actually record what it is you want to identify. So for example, if I'm the correct equipment and I need lighting, I better make sure that I do it in a setting that's appropriate, lighting, etc., etc. All right, and also, to me, the correct equipment will allow for me to also edit and modify. We'll get to that later on. We need to plan the video. Now, in planning a video, yes, I need to write the script, I need to task analyze, I need to detail exactly what I want this video to illustrate. And why is that so important? Because the individual, the user, is watching this to learn from it. And so if we haven't scripted it out, if we haven't planned it out, if we haven't analyzed it out, the user may very well connect on something that's not nearly as critical. We may have a number of different components that we've recorded in there that are not relevant because we say, well, that's not relevant. That's not what we're trying to focus in on. But we had to record it because, I don't know, well, we did. Well, we didn't script it out. And then the reality is that the user watches this and says, oh, this is all important. No. We need to script it out so we can emphasize and we can shoot what's really critical. Now, of course, in terms of shooting, editing, lots of different technologies there. But when planning it, we create a script, we task analyze it, we break down the complex skills, we sequence it. There's a host of different things that we need to do in the preparation. We also need to, prior to actually recording the videos, let's collect some baseline. Let's figure out how the student is orientated towards completion, what they're able to do, what they're not able to do, which actually will help in the actual creation. And then, of course, we make it. Now, when we make it, we probably need a script. Not only probably, I would say very likely. And by the way, that script could be a narration. We could collect video that has no sound, no recording. It has interaction, and we narrate over it. That's very possible. But the big thing here is record the video, hopefully in the sequence, and we record it with quality, the steps, etc. Now, I mentioned the playground as an example for Nolan. Well, in Kansas, the playground is going to basically provide wind. It's very, very likely. And I don't know how many video models I've seen on the playground where I can't hear what it is we're trying to illustrate because of the wind. Yeah, there's audio going on, but there's also wind going on. So how do we create that? Well, of course, we task analyze it, we script it out, we organize it, and when we collect it, we may realize that, you know what, it's too windy, so we're going to have to record over it later on. We arrange the environment to watch the video. So now we've collected it. Now we want them to be able to watch it. And in watching it, we want to be able to make sure that we connect the environment where the video will be watched to potentially where we want it to be applied. Now, we're not going to go and have Nolan watch the video out on the slide, but we might have Nolan watch the video prior to or just after being out on the slide. We'll also want to do, in terms of natural setting, something that is in the school versus at home for that generalization. For a lot of our learners, that's necessary. Now, when we show the video, we might want to prepare in terms of when we stop to prompt, or we might want to make sure that the student is watching it numerous times. Or in that instance, we might want to make sure that we can stop and maybe practice or further illustrate. And maybe we only do this a couple different times, but that may be very, very helpful and very, very relevant to the learner we're working with. Number 8, we want to monitor the progress. We collected data in step 4. Well, we're going to collect the same data to determine, are we having success? Is watching this video, the way we recorded it and the way we organized it, having success with the learner? It should. It's an evidence-based practice. Now, we also want to troubleshoot in that if they're not making progress, what do we want to determine? Is it that the intervention needs to be adjusted? Do we need to do more prompting in between? Do we need to set it up a little bit? Do we need to adjust the actual video modeling itself and recreate another one? Are they watching it enough times per week? When they are watching it, are they attending to it? Are we making connections in terms of what we're asking them to do? Are we giving them enough time? Are we analyzing the task well enough? A host of things goes into this. And finally, if it's successful, we want to fade the video. Well, how do we fade the video? Well, we may stop watching it as much. We may not do it prior to the activity, maybe doing it after or vice versa. And then, of course, if the student is enjoying it, let's say for generalization, let's say that it's reinforcement, sure, we can do that. But as we know, there's only so much time in the class, so much time in the day. And so we want to be appropriate and mindful of that. But hopefully, if we have success, we're fading the video. And if anything, maybe we're replacing this video with another video for modeling another behavior that we want them to learn. All right. I know that was a lot of me talking. I know that was a lot of me just sharing some visuals of text. I apologize. But those are the 10 steps in terms of video modeling that brings video and modeling to life in an effective way to teach social skills for individuals with social skill deficits.